Good morning. Good morning. Happy birthday, Judy Clark. Happy Wednesday, March 20th. This is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow up here on Lake Wissota in beautiful Chippewa Falls. Nice to have you along for the show today. We're going to talk about some of the things Donald Trump's been saying on the campaign trail. Don't bring your lie detector. It'll burn out, as we talk about the things that have been happening as part of his campaign. We also have a special guest for this week's Climate Check with Melissa Baldoff. She's joined by Assembly Democratic Leader Greta Neubauer, and we'll talk about the end of the legislative session and things that did and didn't get done that can address a changing climate. In our second hour, we talked to two officials from the Chippewa Falls School District in our homeroom segment. We've been dedicating that these past couple of weeks to all the many referendums that school districts have put on the ballot across Wisconsin for April 2nd. And people are no doubt looking at that and saying, wow, 91 school referendums. What are all those school districts doing wrong? It's not the school districts. And we'll explain the whole situation behind that coming up. And it's Wednesday, so we get Todd Alba, along with meteorologist Brittany Merlot's forecast. All that and more coming up at 6:06, right after a radio news break. We'll see you soon. And apparently, I still have to work some kinks out of my throat here. So I'm going to turn this mic off and make some unnatural noises. And here we go.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, that would be me. Hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06 on this Wednesday morning, March 20th, 2024. Another beautiful day to have you here up north. We're live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, through the app, social media, and podcast. Nice to have you along however you got here. I got a question for you. Did you realize we flipped from winter to spring overnight? I mean, officially, as in not really, because we've had a whole bunch of spring days and now we're having a bunch of winter days in the spring. Theater of Seasons, kids. It's all about the Theater of Seasons, and Brittany Merlot will have our forecast, including the last range that Sherry and I saw on some forecasts were, depending on where you were, 1 to 9 inches. So we're gonna try to pin down Ms. Merlot a little further on that about an hour from now. Here's what else is coming up this morning. When it comes to a changing climate, the bad news about its impact can be accompanied by some good news about the economic opportunities that come when you move toward a cleaner and greener economy. Unfortunately, the climate for new jobs is downright hostile among Republicans in the Wisconsin legislature. They seem downright allergic to job creation. We'll hear more as Melissa Baldoff is joined by Assembly Minority Leader Greta Neubauer coming up at about 6:30 this morning. In our second hour, just how badly is the legislature failing to hold up its end of the bargain to fund the education of Wisconsin kids? Here's how bad. 4 out of every 5 school districts in the state have found it necessary at some point to ask people to raise their own property taxes just to maintain the current level of services, which may have sounded necessary at some point, but how does it sound now when state legislators have been sitting on a multi-billion-dollar surplus, and yet there are still 91 school referendums around the state? We're going to learn more from 2 members of the Chippewa Falls School District Administration about the referendum here, and then, of course, the bigger picture, what all of these school districts have to deal with because of a legislature that has been gerrymandered to the right wing for many years, and the potential for better times come November with fairer maps. We'll also have Todd Alba coming along to tell us what's on his afternoon show. And there's a contest to tell you about as well. First, let's go over some of the cooler temperatures here in Chippewa Falls. It's 21 degrees right now. Hayward's at 17. Park Falls, 18. Wausau reporting 23 degrees. Green Bay, 26. La Crosse, 26. Wisconsin Rapids, 24 degrees. Oshkosh is at 28. Madison is at 30. And it is 27 in Waukesha, where we find Greg Bach, who spins the dials, flips the levers, and otherwise just continues to use the bellows on the fireplace and shovel coal into it to keep this little engine that could rolling along. Mr. Bach, good morning.
Chugga, chugga, choo, choo.
That's what you need, like an engineer's cap if you're gonna be running this train, you know.
Really quick question for you, Pat. Before the show, we were talking about where you would live up in Lake Wissota, and you mentioned there's Little Lake Wissota.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That
Little
were
Lake
they
Wissota.
just like, we're smaller, just call it that. It's fine.
Well, it actually is a separate body. Remember, this whole thing was formed by building a dam.
Yeah.
And so what the dam did when it went up was the water filled in some of the, I wouldn't call them valleys, but some of the low spots, but there were farms on there and everything else. And so these low spots where there were farms filled up, and it just happens to be that there's a divide there, which is part natural, but it was part created by when they ran train tracks through there. And so there's actually a very long, I don't know what you'd call it, a berm or something, that divides the two with just a narrow channel that goes under a bridge. And I was telling Greg off air the story earlier, and everybody listening to 93.5 The Tap in Chippewa Falls knows this story well, that the railroad bridge, that divides Lake Wissota from Little Lake Wissota, sits very low, and so not many boats are small enough to get underneath it. And for years and years and years, there's been talk about trying to get the bridge raised, but it would cost a lot of money. The railroads aren't really willing to get involved in this. And so, yeah, you have this separate lake where if you've got a boat small enough to get under there, it's like your own little playground just for the little boats that can go through.
The little boats on Little Lake Wissota. It's
On
hard
Little
to
Lake
say.
Wissota.
Little Lake
Yes.
Wissota.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Very interesting. The things I learned about Wisconsin. I love it.
Yeah, and then right near the railroad bridge is what's called the island, and because it is now, it's an island. But again, once upon a time there was a farm there, and it was just one of the hills on the farm. And over the years, that hill, of course, has been that island has been kind of disintegrating, falling into the lake. It probably won't happen in our lifetime, but it's a lot smaller than it used to be. But it's also a place where, shall we say, the kids go to play on the weekends. It's just it looks like, you ever see those pictures from like Lake of the Ozarks where it almost looks like you could walk across the lake on people's boats?
Yeah.
There's so many of them. That's what it's like around the island there in the summertime.
That sounds lovely.
It is a lot of good places to play there. The Up North News Daily Newsletter is out, of course, as it is every morning at 5 a.m. You can sign up for that over at upnorthnewswi.com. And I was going to mention the contest as well. What do we call that thing there, Greg? Ride into Spring.
Ride into Spring.
Because there's grand prizes of bicycles involved in this thing, as well as overnight stays at Chula Vista Resort in Wisconsin Dells. There's outdoor patio furniture. There's a 3-in-1 blender, all kinds of good stuff. And what I don't know, and maybe you do, but there are 4 winners each day, because we play the game 4 times a day at 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m.
Yep.
But I wonder if they give a list at the end of the day of the texts that they draw, so we can tell people who the winners are. You don't see anything like that about yesterday's winners, do you?
I didn't see anything come through.
Okay.
I believe they contact the winners directly.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be fun. Be like, so it's so and so from Manitowish Waters, another place that's interesting. It's like Manitowish will be the same, but we're next to waters.
It's better. It's water.
Yeah,
It's like
right. Exactly.
Location.
Exactly.
For folks who missed it yesterday, what the Ride into Spring text contest is, it's a statewide contest across the civic media stations, all of them, the music stations, the talk stations, and the key to it all is having the civic media app. He said, opening it on his phone right now, so he could show the folks watching on Facebook and things like that. Oh, that's really bright. But anyway, there's my phone. There's my civic media app that's currently tuned to the Shaw, WAUK, but you can pick any of the stations in the civic media constellation and give a listen. But also, it's got a text feature. And 4 times a day, there's going to be a different keyword that's mentioned. You use the text feature on the app. You text that keyword back to one of the radio stations, and that's it. You're entered. You'll be entered, and then 4 times a day, one of those texts is drawn randomly to win an overnight getaway to Chula Vista Resort, and then you're automatically entered in for the grand prize as well, which involves the aforementioned bicycles, outdoor furniture, and things like that. So be listening at about 7:07 when Brittany Merlot joins us as well, and get set to hear today's keyword, text it in, and be part of the contest. As we unpack some of the news at 6:15, we're going to start with Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, who on the one hand, yesterday, referred to some of Donald Trump's more spirited supporters as whack jobs and morons, and said that they were out of touch with reality for trying to recall him because he wouldn't do enough to help Donald Trump cheat and win the election in 2020. And then later, when asked if he would endorse Donald Trump for president, Robin Vos said yes, he endorses Donald Trump for president. So Robin Vos continues his effort to try to have it both ways, to get the best out of cozying up, to put it politely, to Donald Trump, and at the same time having to deal with the people who love him more than Robin Vos does, the people that he referred to as whack jobs and morons. This was all mentioned at a wispolitics.com luncheon yesterday, where Voss was the guest of honor and was taking questions from reporters and other attendees. And he was asked, of course, about the petitions that were turned in last week by those folks who were seeking a recall election. Even though, Voss's seat will be up in November, but it's not stopping, these folks who have the audacity to refer to Robin Voss as a rhino because he's not Republican enough because he wouldn't help Donald Trump cheat back in 2020. Well, the recall effort may fail. It already appears that they don't have enough valid signatures from the current district. It's not quite clear yet if there are enough signatures from the new district, and it's not clear which one of those standards is used for a recall election. The Wisconsin Supreme Court has agreed to at least review the arguments and may then give advice at that point. Although by the time all of that happens, it's going to be time for the regular election anyway. But go figure, a big part of the problem from the Trump supporters gathering these signatures on recall petitions and turning them in is that a whole lot of the signatures were apparently fake, were fraudulent, were put there without the permission of the people whose names were signed. As Voss put it, there was a ton of fraud. Voss claims up to 400 duplicated signatures, missing and misspelled information, and the names of people who didn't actually sign, including his own. Apparently somebody signed Robin Voss's name to a recall petition to recall Robin Voss. He predicted that fewer than half of the nearly 11,000 signatures submitted will be found to be valid. And he said he hopes that the Wisconsin Elections Commission will refer to local prosecutors anyone determined to have committed a crime related to the petition circulation, which is rich when you consider that this is the same Robin Voss who has been working so hard to undermine the Wisconsin Elections Commission, to fire or impeach the administrator of the Wisconsin Elections Commission. But now, when he's the one facing trouble, he's really hoping that the Wisconsin Elections Commission will come through for him, get these other whack jobs and morons charged, and just forget all of that little business about Robin Voss trying to, eliminate the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Just another day in Wisconsin politics. It's another day on the campaign trail because Donald Trump is lying through his teeth. I'll talk about that in just about 90 seconds. Wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this Wednesday morning, when you're here, you're up north, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. Coming up in today's history lesson, about a half hour from now, we'll tell you why we're playing that tune about the Man in Motion song from St. Elmo's Fire, part of today's musical history in just a little bit here. One other note from WisPolitics, we were mentioning the luncheon that they had yesterday. They also reported late yesterday that Scott Mayer, the businessman from Franklin, told WisPolitics he has decided against running for U.S. Senate to avoid a, quote, bloody primary with Eric Hovde that he feared would damage Republican chances of beating Democratic incumbent Tammy Baldwin, which shows you a guy who remembers his history, because it was in 2012 when Tommy Thompson emerged from a bruising 3 or 4 candidate primary that Tammy Baldwin was able to win the general election because Tommy Thompson was so damaged coming out of that primary. Scott Mayer saying he's not going to be responsible for a bitter, divisive primary in the Republican Party this time around. It's still possible that other people will get in the race, former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, among others. But at this point, it looks like Eric Hovde is having the lane cleared for him. You can do that when you have a lot of money. His ads have been running quite regularly here in the Chippewa Valley, and I'm sure across Wisconsin as well. There's one featuring his wife saying that she would vote for him. Okay, well, thanks for spending money on that one. And then there's the one where he's standing in a bar, and I want to reach through the screen. I want to reach through the screen. Okay, I know. I'm going to get the old man bell. I want to reach through that screen and button that extra button on his shirt that he's undone, because we're not in California anymore, Eric Hovde. And where's the gold chains? Button that top button. Anyway, but they're in that commercial. The larger point is him saying, I don't need a salary. If you elect me as your senator, I will donate it to charity. He doesn't say which charity, which raises a whole new set of questions, based on what we learned about Tim Michels when he ran for governor and some of the rather extreme things that he defined as charity that, digitally tracked women who visited clinics that provide abortion. So I'd certainly like to know more about that from Eric Hovde. But again, if a guy is so wealthy that he does not need the job, he does not need the salary, then you'd better work extra hard to prove to us that you're going to be on the side of, Wisconsin and not on the side of the upper crust that you come from now. You can claim Wisconsin roots all day long, but in the category of what have you done for us lately? Again, all we've seen is, the operation of a California bank and holding a bunch of real estate. So, unlike, say, Herb Kohl, when a very rich guy got into the race, he had, 10 plus years of political activity behind him. We knew what he stood for. We knew what he would do. Eric Hovde, not so much, but at least at this point, he does not face primary opposition. All right, I'm going to tell you about a couple of things that Donald Trump said on the campaign trail. If you want to react at any point here, you can call or text us. The number is 855-75-CIVIC. 855-75-CIVIC is what gets you through here. And it's something that Trump said again that he said over the weekend, and it's about the war in Israel and the Gaza Strip against Hamas. And obviously, there are very strong emotions. There are very strong actions. There's very strong consequences here in the United States for candidates from both political parties. And as a result, it is as important as ever not to go off the deep end. There's enough extremism as there is out there. And yet here goes Donald Trump, full-blown extremist, saying you can't be Jewish and vote Democratic. You don't get to say that. And no different than I've seen the bumper stickers that say you can't be Catholic and vote Democrat. No, you don't get to say that. That's not your call to make. If you want to put people in a pen based on your view of a particular religion or ideology, then you do that with the people that you can control. But for Donald Trump to say that people who are Jewish but vote Democratic aren't really Jewish, and that Democrats hate Israel, which was something else he said, this is again a reminder of a man who does not stand for anything. He's not telling you anything about the work that he wants to do on your behalf. All he knows is how to divide and to use hate speech to divide. And by the way, this is very rich coming from an adjudicated rapist who is enjoying so much support from so-called evangelicals who are doing far more harm to the view of Christianity than any Democratic voting Jewish person is doing to Judaism. Donald Trump can just sit down if he wants to talk about religion and religious values at all. But that's not all he's been doing lately. He also is continuing to spread the lie that said Iran suddenly received billions of dollars because of U.S. activity that went to Hamas to fund the October attack in Israel. No, that was never the case. It's been debunked 8 ways to Sunday that the money that was unfrozen in a South Korean bank for Iran was not something available to Iran. Iran had been supporting Hamas for many, many years anyway, and did not happen in any extra degree because of a deal that the United States and other countries were involved in to try to keep Iran from, obtaining and creating nuclear weapons. But again, it's easier to lie about that. It's easier to lie, as he also did, about NATO. Again, spreading the lie that our European allies are somehow financially stiffing NATO, and that if they don't pay their share, that, he won't blame Vladimir Putin or stand up with our allies if Putin, were to not only conquer Ukraine, but then start moving into the Baltic states rather, and Poland and elsewhere. And he says NATO matters more to the European countries than it does to the U.S. Again, from somebody who does not remember history and does not know the danger of letting a dictator run unchecked through Europe and what that would do to the United States in the end, what it would do to the world economy. But again, from a human decency level, what it would do to our fellow humans, our allies in these countries. So if he's not getting any work done, who is? Well, President Biden yesterday signed an executive order to support women's health research. The announcement calls for the National Institutes of Health to invest $200 million in the fiscal year 2025 to more than 20 new actions to address gaps in women's health research. It'll target issues unique to women: menopause, perimenopause, endometriosis, heart attacks, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, health conditions that women tend to experience after menopause, and look to expand resources for women learning about their treatment options. Contrast that, by the way, we'll end where we started with Robin Vos, who single-handedly held up a bill that did not allow for Medicaid to cover women postpartum for a full year. Wisconsin's one of only 3 states now, 3 states, along with Idaho and Arkansas, that strip away women's postpartum health care covered through Medicaid after only 60 days. 47 states have extended coverage to 1 year postpartum because of the clear track record of serious health complications that new moms face. So Joe Biden and legislative Democrats and Governor Evers doing the work on behalf of women. And Robin Vos and Donald Trump, not so much. Today's Climate Check segment coming up next. You're Up North.
It's electric.
Welcome back. We are so happy to be joined by Melissa Baldoff and a special guest for this week's Climate Check segment. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thanks. And we'll get right into our special guest because she's on the board of a group with a report that came out recently talking all about the clean energy boom that's coming to the U.S. and especially to rural parts of the country. And it kind of dovetails in nicely with the Forward on Climate legislative package that our special guest, Assembly Democratic Leader Greta Neubauer, is here to talk about as well. Leader Neubauer, good morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Really glad to be able to join you, Pat and Melissa.
Yeah. It's our pleasure. And Melissa and I have such good talks every week, not just about the problems that are out there, but the opportunities. And so I want to kind of hand this off a bit to Melissa to get into the first question with you. Melissa, you and I, spoke a couple of weeks ago or so when that Climate Power is the name of the group, when their report came out on the state of the clean energy boom. There wasn't a lot of surprise for you and me, but I think a lot of people still kind of look and say, wow, do we really have that bright of a future in the green energy sector?
Well, I think we can. I think that it's up to us how bright that future can be in Wisconsin. We are seeing that from this clean energy report from Climate Power that the president's clean energy plan has helped create over 271,000 jobs since it was passed. So that's, those are pretty incredible numbers. And, there's really the only place to go is up. And I think that we know that there is a lot of capacity, a lot of, possibility in Wisconsin. You and I have talked to folks from organized labor. We have talked to folks in the business advocacy world. We've talked to folks in the clean energy advocacy world, and everyone's really excited about what's possible. To me, what's so exciting is to know that we have folks in the state legislature who are forward thinking, who are looking to what's possible. And, I think it's very exciting to me to hear what Leader Neubauer and her colleagues are cooking up.
Yeah, it really sounds, Representative Neubauer, like the messaging around the climate, while still dire, there's a lot of glass half full in terms of potential, and it doesn't have to all be talk about the glass half empty.
Absolutely. I started working on the issue of climate change when I was in high school and particularly in college. That was a while ago, over 10 years, and things were really different. We were seeing very little action from politicians, state, local, federal, on the issue of climate, and that has really changed. Of course, particularly with President Joe Biden's leadership, passing the most important, the most significant climate legislation in our country's history. And that is already making a significant difference in Wisconsin with over 1,000 new jobs, clean energy jobs in Wisconsin, and $920 million of new clean energy investments just here in Wisconsin, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act.
So that came through the Inflation Reduction Act, but then at the state level, you and your Democratic colleagues, as I mentioned, put together your own legislative package. And I know we've talked about it, but it's been several months since then. I know that they're built on recommendations from the governor's task force on climate change, but what all is a part of that package? And then just as importantly, with a Republican majority in the legislature, was there any progress made on any of these fronts this year? So let's start with describing what all is in the package.
Sure. So as you noted, Pat, this package was born largely out of the governor's task force on climate change, led by former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, that I served on a couple of years ago. There were people across the state, various industries, backgrounds, who contributed to that task force. And we recognized that there was a lot that needed to be done at the state level for us to reduce our carbon footprint, to reduce our longstanding inequities, and to create good jobs, all of which are possible when we tackle climate change. This package is wide-ranging. It covers everything from investments in our schools to make them greener and healthier places for our young people, to supporting our farmers to adopt best practices, a green jobs corps, getting young people involved in the burgeoning clean energy industry. It is broad-ranging, as I said, and it recognizes that there are real opportunities for us to improve our lives here in Wisconsin by tackling climate change. It's not about scarcity, it's about opportunities. And I think that's what we're seeing from the actions of President Biden, and that is how we understand our work here in the state. Unfortunately, Republicans have not moved these bills forward. But as you both know, things are changing in the state legislature. We've got new fair legislative maps that I think are going to prevent Republicans from acting like climate change does not exist here in Wisconsin.
So one of the, criticisms we always hear about, investing in the clean energy economy and about, I would say clean energy in general is, they only want to put money into the cities and, they only want to, reward certain kinds of communities. But what I'm seeing is that these investments are really supporting all communities. And there's especially, a good bit of opportunity in rural communities and in low income communities. So how did that kind of knowledge help shape some of the legislation that you and your colleagues put together?
So we understand that in order to have the political will to pass policies that address climate change, they have to also make our lives better. And there are a lot of people in Wisconsin who are struggling to make ends meet. Those are family farmers, right, who may have owned land for generations. And the current context for that industry is that a lot of people are struggling. We have, of course, larger farms in Wisconsin and people who work on those farms who may or may not make a great wage because we're seeing economic fluctuations hit those industries, dairy industry, et cetera, hard as well. And then, of course, we have cities like the ones I represent, Racine, Milwaukee, many others with long-standing persistent inequities, often along the lines of race, and then, of course, economic stratification as well. There are a lot of people in Wisconsin who need us to do everything we can here in the state legislature to give them a fair shot at a good life and to be able to picture a future for themselves in which their family is stable, they are saving for retirement, and they are doing what they can to give back to their community. And so we really did think about those needs that we hear about from our constituents in this package. And then I'll note again, one of my favorite bills, one that I authored this session is the Climate Corps. There are a lot of young people, particularly in our cities, who are not sure what the future holds for them, who might have significant student debt, who might be looking at their future and be unsure about how they can make a good wage that supports their family. And so the Green Jobs Bill, the Climate Corps bill, is aimed at helping young people get into those good jobs, hopefully union jobs, that are going to provide for them long term and that are going to make their communities better places to live.
When I think of the lack of progress on these bills this year, it reminds me of a conversation Melissa and I had a couple weeks back, that there actually is a conservative climate caucus in the U.S. House. And just as they thought they were making some progress, because there are people on the Republican side that want to make progress on climate issues and job creation, they're hearing from the Trump campaign, that they're not going to get any of what they want. It sounds like, and I may be painting with a broad brush, but there isn't really a climate caucus per se among Republican legislators this year based on their actions. Or am I misreading that? And you feel like if some of these bills actually came up for a clean vote, that they'd get bipartisan support?
I think they would get support. And we have had members of the Republican caucus reach out to us about some of these bills, about, again, funding investments in communities like theirs that will improve their constituents' quality of life. It has clearly not been a priority for Republican leadership and for the Republican Party nationally. And that's why we haven't seen movement. It's not that people who represent northern Wisconsin don't see that there's opportunities there for the people of their communities. But As I said, I think things are changing. They're changing really quickly. When I came into this body about 6 years ago, there were still people who were sort of acting like climate change didn't exist. Now, you can't really make that case anymore. And I have had conversations in the last several months with my Republican colleagues about the fact that there was no ice fishing in their community this year. And it's hard to deny that things are really different in Wisconsin than they were 10, 20 years ago. So I think we are going to see more movement next year. As I said, the dynamics are changing. A lot of Republicans are going to be competing in districts that are much more competitive than they ever had, not to mention that we could have a Democratic majority next year in the state assembly.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting because, to your point, the realities are just you can't avoid them, you can't deny them, you can't ignore what's happening. So my question for you is, if we wave the magic wand and find ourselves with a majority, and you are leading the Democratic caucus, what is the first order of business when it comes to climate from your perspective? Is it passing these bills en masse, or is there something else that you think would be the top priority?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's hard to pick a favorite. All these policies, of course, are so important. But I guess I'd say the first priority, the most urgent priority, is making sure that we take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us because of the federal government. I cannot overstate how many resources are available to homeowners. They're coming for renters, right, to improve the insulation in their homes, to save money, to have healthier, safer places for their families to live. Again, those EV charging dollars and infrastructure investments, these are things our communities need. And we also, we know that Wisconsin is going to have demographic challenges long term for our workforce. We know that there are a lot of young people who are choosing to go other places. Really tackling climate change in Wisconsin is a great way to signal to young people that we want them here. And this is going to be a place that is good to live as we face increasing weather events. And we are preparing for those. We are investing in resilience, and we are investing in sustainability and in equity. And so I think there's just so much that we can do to look at those resources available from the federal government and to position ourselves to bring those in and to use them to make people's lives better here in Wisconsin.
We've heard some of the most extreme voices in the Republican Party calling for the president's clean energy plan to be repealed, kind of like they've been trying to get to overturn the Affordable Care Act. Now they want to overturn the clean energy plan. People like, the Derek Van Ordens of the world who are super extreme. How concerned should we be about Republican efforts at the federal level to stop our progress?
I think there's a real threat. There is always a threat. We know how Donald Trump feels about climate change. We know that he will not only refuse to take this problem seriously, but he will move us backwards. And if we allow him to become the president and give him the majorities that he would like to have in the House and Senate, we will move backwards. And we do not have time to move backwards. We have to continue to make progress. We are already behind on addressing climate change. We are already going to feel the impacts of climate change here in Wisconsin for years to come, particularly low-income people and people of color. And we have to do everything in our power to build our resilience and to decrease our carbon footprint. There's simply no other option. And so, of course, would encourage anyone who is concerned about this issue to make sure that you are getting involved, because this election is going to be incredibly important for the trajectory of our country.
Assembly Minority Leader Greta Neubauer. Leader Neubauer, thank you very much for filling us in on this week's edition of Climate Check, and more about what the legislature has and has not accomplished so far this year. It was great being able to talk to you. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Melissa, thank you so much as well. We'll talk to you again next week. And for everybody else, we'll be back in a bit here up north. Hi, neighbor.
Hi, neighbor.
We are celebrating the 95th anniversary, no, 96th anniversary of the birth of Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, who passed away in 2003, but whose landmark TV show lives on, along with the phrase,
"It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
a beautiful day in the
Beautiful day
neighborhood.
for a neighbor. Would you be mine?
I love this man so
Would
much.
you be mine?
To the point where when people try to like parody him in cartoons and like try to make him seem less than what he was, I get very upset.
There was one kind of a quirk that he had that I now have and realize it's not a quirk. But you know how he'd come in and he'd, change out of a coat and then he'd maybe put on a sweater and then he'd sit down on that bench and he would take off a pair of shoes and then he'd put on a pair of shoes. Well, when you're a kid, I mean, you don't do that. You take off your shoes and you're running around the house barefoot or in your stocking feet or whatever. I'm now at that age. He said, reaching down where I have to put on my indoor shoes when I come
I got indoors
for our orthotic support. Yay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Let's.
I got house shoes.
Let's hear it from
I got
middle-aged
house
boys and girls.
Yeah, folks, you got to have some house shoes because your feet on linoleum, on ceramic tile, on hardwood floors, that is not good for your body. You don't have to be like jumping up and down. Just that constant motion, that patting down on your feet, that's not good for your body.
No, it's not.
Get yourself some house shoes, baby.
Arch support is a good thing.
Yes.
This segment brought to you by AARP, which is also noting the anniversary of the birth of Jerry Reed, who gave us all kinds of fun little songs, like this one from Smokey and the Bandit. Oh, yeah.
He's bound it down, loaded up and trucking.
Do they make what I would consider a screwball comedy? Because, I mean, Smokey and the Bandit, that was a great screwball comedy. That you had it going way back to the early days of film. And what would count as, I guess, some of the Will Ferrell movies, like Talladega Nights and all that, would, they don't really have a point. They're comedies. They're comedies that have a fully developed plot line, and then there's just people goofing off on the screen.
Yeah,
Zoolander.
It's gonna be pure wacky. It's a wacky comedy. Like it's gonna be wacky.
Yeah, my point being, we need more wacky.
I agree. And honestly, I'll bet you there's a lot of wacky out there, but with so much variety, you're like, my God, where do I find it?
I couldn't agree more. I want to see more of that. On this day in 1916, Albert Einstein published his General Theory of Relativity. On this day in 1971, the number one song was by Janis Joplin.
But feeling good was easy down when he sang the blues. Hey, feeling good was good enough for me. Good enough for me and my Bobby. Yeah.
Unfortunately, she had passed away 6 months earlier, and so this was Janis Joplin's only top 10 hit number one this day in 1971, and I'm suddenly remembering all the things we said about Amy Winehouse about a week or two ago. So,
written by Chris Christopherson.
Yes, and he does not get songwriting credit out there.
No, he's one of the greatest songwriters ever. Period.
On this day in 1990, speaking of prolific songwriters, here's a song written by Prince. But it was Sinead O'Connor. This day in 1990, she released her second album, I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got, which included this Prince-written single.
But nothing, I said nothing can take away this blues, 'cause nothing compares.
On this day in 2003, the Iraq War, when the U.S., the United Kingdom, Australia, and Poland began an invasion of Iraq on this day in 2003. On this day in 2020, The Weeknd released After Hours, an album filled with lots of anxiety and paranoia that probably resonated well in those early weeks of the coronavirus lockdown. It went to number one in large part because of this single, Blinding Lights.
I always feel like I need to be running while I'm like...
Yes, it's true. Now, here's a sign that, again, I'm spending too much time on TikTok. And by the way, if a guy about to turn 60 is spending too much time on TikTok, hey, kids, the platform's dead. Go find something else to play on now. Grandpa found you. I've chased you from Facebook to Instagram. Now you're here on TikTok.
Words.
Kids, how are you?
Grandpa found you. Ah!
It's the internet's version of hide and seek. So pick a new one. Anyway, in a sign that I spend too much time on TikTok, there are people who will film themselves doing different genres of something. Somebody the other day put up a country genre version of this.
Ooh.
And this person was right. It actually sounds as good or better as a country song.
I'm gonna look that up.
I know.
This was a sound. This song was a sound on TikTok when I first got on it. So when I hear the chorus, it takes me back to 2020, being in bed for hours at a time doing nothing and watching TikTok.
Oh yeah, that's what the kids did. And like I said, now the old folks have caught up. On this day in 1985, Canadian paraplegic athlete and humanitarian Rick Hansen began his circumnavigation of the globe in a wheelchair in the name of spinal cord injury medical research. It inspired fellow Canadian David Foster to work with singer John Parr to write the tribute song, Man in Motion, that we heard a little earlier this hour, which also was used in the movie St. Elmo's Fire. On the National Day calendar, I don't understand some of these. Like today is International Day of Happiness. I mean, shouldn't every day be? Look at you. To your happiness. It's a National Ravioli Day. It's National Alien Abduction Day. I should have had that weird Carpenters song ready to go.
Oh.
By the way, Sherry told me yesterday.
No. Say it again. What's today? What's today?
Today is Alien Abduction Day. Sherry says to me last night, hey, I forgot to tell you this the other day. That creepy Carpenter song you played about connecting with aliens, I'd never heard that before. It's weird, really weird. I'm like, I heard it 1,000 times back then, and I still think it's weird. This is National Bibliomania Day, National Astrology Day, Bach Beer Day, Great American Meat Out Day. So I guess you're supposed to go vegan for a day. Is it macarons? Are those the things, the little meringue discs, and then they've got some buttercream filling in there?
I think those are macaroons. I'm not sure.
I thought macaroons were like the things with like coconut or something.
Coconut.
Look who I'm talking to about coconut. No thanks. No. This is small business.
Know your enemy. Know your enemy.
Small Business Development Center Day. So thanks to all the folks who are helping grow our hometowns all over. It's National Oral Health Day, National Math Day, but then most importantly, National Won't You Be My Neighbor Day. Again, happy birthday, Fred Rogers. And we'll have much more coming up in the second hour, including our homeroom segment about school referendums across Wisconsin. Next, you're up north. Ms. Merlot, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Here we go.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
All right, the coffee cup has been refilled, ready for another hour here on Up North News Radio on this Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Nice to have you along. Meteorologist Brittany Merlot has our forecast in just a sec. First to tell you, coming up this hour, we will again in this week's homeroom segment remind folks that the reason there are 91 school referendums on the ballot around the state on April 1st, or April 2nd rather, it's no accident. And it's not that 91 school districts suddenly decided to become very wasteful with their spending. We're going to talk about the legislature's role in chronic underfunding of public education, kicking the can to property taxpayers, and yet property taxpayers should not take that out on the school district. Think about your legislative elections come November. We're going to talk to two members of the Chippewa Falls School District about the referendum here in Chippewa Falls and all around the state coming up in just a moment. Also, we should we'll do our little contest here right away, our Ride into Spring contest. And to do that, you're going to need the Civic Media app. So if you haven't done it yet, download the Civic Media app, and then you look up any one of the Civic Media radio stations, preferably the one in your area, if you have one in your area. And by the way, go to civicmedia.us if you want to know more about that. But anyway, use the text feature and text a keyword, and you'll be entered in this hour's contest for the Ride into Spring drawing. And the keyword is pool, as in swimming pool. Pool. Text pool through the Civic Media app to one of the Civic Media stations, and you will automatically be entered. There is 4 winners each day, 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m. They'll draw those 4 daily winners, and they win an overnight getaway to Chula Vista Resort in Wisconsin Dells, and then also entered for several grand prizes that will be taken care of at the end of the contest. So again, pool, Pool, text that through the Civic Media app, and you will be entered in the Civic Media statewide Ride into Spring text contest. All right, coming up on 7:09 now, meteorologist Brittany Merlot is here to tell us that, I'll tell you, it looks better than it feels out there right now. It looks very pretty. It doesn't feel so good.
That is the perfect way to put it, honestly. You head outside, temperatures are in the teens up north to the 20s, down to the south, but with those winds still whipping up to 30 miles per hour, it is feeling like the single digits in the northern half of the state.
Yes, Rob is telling us in Tigerton it's cloudy 23, the wind chill 11. I don't want 11, but no. I got a feeling we're going to have this for a while.
11.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, man, we are stuck in that cold here today. In fact, the winds aren't going to let up, and our highs today are only going to feel like the 20s statewide. That's what you need to dress for today. Don't worry about what the actual forecast is. Just know that it's going to be feeling like the 20s all day, but it's going to be bright and beautiful, ton of sunshine. And then we have to prep, of course, for the one of 4 major snowstorms that are headed our way to close out this month.
I'm sorry, what?
Yep. Just throw that on you.
Pat, can I cut her mic?
No, apparently this is like life or death stuff. We need to let her talk some more. Did you say one of 4 snowstorms coming this way?
Yes, I did. So one of 4 before we get into April. Actually, as we go into April, we'll have one hitting us, and I'm counting that as the 4th one. So a very, very active winter weather pattern headed our way, and the first accumulating snow Thursday night into Friday afternoon. You're scratching
me.
your head.
It's me. I'm the problem. It's me. I put a fuel stabilizer in the snowblower over the weekend, and
You did?
yeah, we're
Yep.
done. We're done.
Yep.
It's all set.
You jinxed it.
Yeah, it's all me. All right. Thank you, Brittany. We'll keep an eye on all this.
Yeah,
and
thanks, Brittany.
Yeah, no problem. Cheers
that
to all
in
the
a
winter weather
good way.
enthusiasts out there.
Yes. Enjoy your day or two before it melts each time. So there.
Thank you.
Temperatures around Civic Media look like this. It's 20 here on Lake Wissota, 14. All the temperatures around the state are down 1 to 3 degrees from the last hour. Hayward's down to 14, Park Falls 17, Wausau 22 degrees right now. Green Bay and La Crosse reporting 24 degrees. Wisconsin Rapids 21. Oshkosh 27, 27 as well in Madison and in Waukesha. And you get the forecast throughout the day here on the Civic Media Radio Network. In our daily newsletter that you can sign up for at Up North News, go to upnorthnewswi.com and click on newsletter in the top banner and become a subscriber. And you get all kinds of great little bits of information. And there's two from this morning's newsletter that I wanted to pass along that you'd be reading otherwise. The first is a story about Margaret Danhauser Brown. She was not only an inaugural member of the Racine Bells, but she was the only player with a listed hometown in Wisconsin. Now, of course, if you know anything about the 1992 movie A League of Their Own with Gina Davis, Madonna, Rosie O'Donnell, you know that the Racine Bells were part of the All-American Girls Baseball League that played 8 seasons from 1943 to 1950, winning the league's first championship title and then 2 others. But again, there was one member who had a tie into Wisconsin, and you can read more in the newsletter about her playing prowess and other achievements that she made by checking out that story in the Up North News Daily Newsletter. Also, Christina Laurie puts in a reminder there, Greg, that I had completely forgotten. We knew that Top Chef was being filmed all around Wisconsin spots a few months back. The premiere is tonight.
Oh, Lordy.
Oh, yes, sir. So set your DVR for Bravo and stay tuned for Top Chef Wisconsin kicking off a 14-week national publicity campaign for the state's food scene.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to not be able to get to the restaurants I love now.
Yeah, I am not a regular watcher of that, but I'm really glad that she got that note there because I'm definitely going to DVR that because now it's my new favorite 14-week soap opera as we follow the perils and pitfalls of people looking to be the top chef.
I just want to make the best food ever. Okay, that's great. Yeah, why are you crying?
Okay. I was looking at the text line here. Luke Mathers literally just texted a GIF right now of somebody being very excited about Top Chef. Thanks,
Or
Mathers.
maybe he's just excited that we're talking.
I think he forgot the keyword is what it is.
No.
And you can't win anyway, Mathers, so don't be texting that stuff in.
No, it's his reaction to Top Chef. Top Chef. This is nothing against Luke, and I love you, Luke. I think you're handsome and capable. But he strikes me as the type of fella who is loving Top Chef. He loves that show. Because he's a foodie guy. He loves the food.
All right. Well, let's see if it's tonight. And then Luke is on with us every Thursday. So I think every Thursday is just going to be Luke Mathers breaking down the last night's episode of Top Chef.
Well, then what I'll be saying is, Luke, I know I watched it, but why don't you explain for everybody else what happened?
I like how you're having an imaginary one-sided fight with somebody who's not here right now.
Luke fights with me all the time.
Well, because he can. Because, again, he's very
True,
handsome and capable and, could leave you out on the street on a heartbeat. All right. There will be even more electric vehicle charging stations popping up around Wisconsin after Governor Evers signed 2 bills to bolster the state's EV, electric vehicle infrastructure. It allows the Department of Transportation to receive and administer some $78 million in federal funds. One of them changes current law to allow businesses to offer EV chargers that sell electricity by the kilowatt hour, which can incentivize more businesses to start offering EV charging. And it also requires the state to receive funding through part of the bipartisan infrastructure law to pay for all of this. It's all designed to support the construction of fast public EV charging stations along major driving corridors that allow EVs to recharge in less than an hour. And then there's another bill that allows more funds to come in to, again, support the businesses that want to put in EV charging stations. I would like one of those someday when the time is right, and I'm glad that many people are catching on with electric vehicles. I've got we recently bought a hybrid, not the kind that you plug in, but the kind that charges itself, and I really enjoy it. I mean, it's a game changer, Greg. But down by you, that's a corridor where you can definitely see where you'd have a whole lot of charging stations. Here up north, it's a bit of a tougher sell for now, but as that network grows, then maybe we'll see some more EVs out there.
Oh, absolutely. I have a hybrid as well. I've been driving one since 2013. I absolutely love it. It's a Honda. It's never going to die. And like as I'm thinking of a new choice for a car, I was thinking hybrid or EV. And one of the things I do take in consideration is, the technology isn't brand new, but it's also like, I'm sure
Still
even
developing.
in 5 years it'll be better. But those charging stations up north, out in the country, out in the desert, you have to have an app to be able to find them. And I'm terrified of being a quarter tank of gas.
Yes, right.
If my car has like 14% of electricity, I'm just going to live here. I live in this desert now.
Well, I have a daughter that lives in Idaho, up in the mountains there.
Oh, that's
and
so cool.
And as more people are moving to that area around Yellowstone and Jackson Hole and places like that, she's noticing all kinds of Teslas and other EVs for sale because people really use them a lot when they lived on the West Coast. But as they're moving out of California or Oregon and heading, to Idaho or Wyoming or points like that, they're realizing the infrastructure isn't really quite there yet to be charging things, charging cars. So, again, it'll come. And I'm looking forward to that because, like I said, my next car, I've had nothing but Jeep Wranglers, and I love them, but my Tushy's getting old now, and I need to park it in something soft and luxurious. So
I need that just to be. My Tushy's getting old. I need soft and luxurious.
And now here's Pat Kreitlow. My Tushy's getting old. Yeah, so it's going to be like a Buick or a Cadillac or something like that, and
a Lincoln Town Car.
Yes, there we go. Well, look, still my favorite car ever of all the old cars I had as a kid, basically, a Mercury Cougar XR7, a 1978 blue two-toned. Yeah. Oh, that thing! It was an aircraft carrier, but it was a luxurious aircraft carrier, and unfortunately
got a mile and a half to the gallon.
And was leaking oil like crazy, so we finally had to get rid of it. But boy, if I could get something like that again for my elderliness, I'm all good. I'm all good with that. We'll unpack more of the news coming up on Up North News Radio in just a bit. Just a reminder, wherever you're listening across Wisconsin, when you're here, you're up north live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network.
crap game going back in the alley. And I kept rolling.
If you're not familiar with When You're Hot, You're Hot, do yourself a favor. Download that fun little tune. All right, this in Getty Images has determined that a photograph of the late Queen Elizabeth was manipulated. The picture agency said the image was, quote, digitally enhanced at the source. According to the handout, Getty Images can confirm that in accordance with its editorial policy, it has placed an editor's note on a handout image stating that it has been digitally enhanced. The company confirmed to Fox television stations. The photo was shared on April 21st of last year and was taken by, Greg, that infamous digital photographer, Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales. It's her again. Her.
Oh.
She, the worst Photoshopper ever, apparently.
And she's got money. It's not like she can just hand it to somebody like, here, make this look real.
Exactly. And but of course, I hate playing the conspiracy game, but how do we know that they blame Kate for the last one? They blame Kate for this one. Nobody's seen Kate. There was some video that purported to show her the other day. I didn't think it looked like her. So I don't know. Is she being held hostage somewhere until she learns how to Photoshop the right way? You're not coming out until we stop getting kill notices from the AP and from Getty Images.
This lacks depth and character.
The photo that Kate posted on March 10th of an official Instagram account that she shares with her husband, Prince William, shows them seated outdoors, the royal family, smiling and surrounded by their 3 children. And I'm looking at it, and there's the Queen sitting in the middle. Yeah, is that ET in the background? I'm not sure. I can't make out how she says it. The AP said they initially published the photo because it was issued by Kensington Palace, but later retracted it because on further inspection, it appeared the image had been manipulated, including, the way that Princess Charlotte's left hand looked. And, again, it's only leading to all the conspiracy theory talk. And again, I hate conspiracy theory talk, but when you give us no other choice, when you hide in your palace and you put out photos that, look like a rank beginner manipulated, what else are we supposed to think about this? And I know the correct answer. Don't think about it. It's none of your business. I get that. I get it.
That's the question I ultimately have about this whole thing is, what consequence do we have, not just as Americans, but just as people in general, by not caring at all about this? Like, if she's in danger, then okay, fine. Then she needs to not be in danger. I hope. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, this feels like, I want to care, but I just don't.
No, I'm definitely not deeply invested in it, but I think it's just that journalistic curiosity that now here's a person in a prominent position, granted in another country, but still this person. And it's just like, we've never really seen anything like this. This is as close as we get to Capricorn 1, which was the movie about how it was a big government conspiracy to stage man landing on the moon. There's just something there. And I'm not caught up in it, but I'm really curious. I can't wait to find out how this all ends. Or does it?
Wait, or does it?
Or does it?
If you had to listen to one person talk about something, would it rather be flat Earth or faking the moon landing? You had to talk to one or the other.
Oh my gosh. I guess it would have to be the flat Earth one. I don't even base that. Why would you give me that kind of a choice? Yikes.
Because it's a terrible choice.
That's like, who do you want to sit next to? Do you want to is it going to be Ted Cruz or, is it going to be Ron Johnson? It's like, no, I don't.
Oh, I'd Ron Johnson. Absolutely. I just stare at him. I'd be like, you've done nothing.
Here's something people will care about.
Yes.
There's about to be a chocolate shortage. I should have had a sound effect there of just people screaming and running for the hills. But according to CNN, satisfying your sweet tooth is going to get more expensive. A recent report from Wells Fargo found that dwindling supply around the world is causing cocoa prices to skyrocket. And I got a feeling that today is our climate check day. Part of the supply issue has to do with the climate, including tree diseases brought on by heavier rainfall. Cocoa tree farmers in West Africa are dealing with dry temperatures and extreme winds from this year's El Nino. The price of cocoa has more than doubled over the last year.
So therefore, we're having a chocolate shortage.
A chocolate shortage. Note here says from I did not realize that Greg Bach had been made king for a day. No more chocolate being used with coconut. So we've now suddenly freed up a whole bunch of chocolate that can be used for everything else.
You know what, Pat? Maybe there is a God above us who smiles down and smiling down on me right now.
Why?
Yes, I believe. I do believe now.
Okay. Let's get some sports headlines at 7:26 here. We are only 8 days away from the Brewers opening day. I guess technically, well, not technically, but for real, the regular season for Major League Baseball opened this morning with the Dodgers and the Padres playing a game in South Korea. I think that game started about 2 hours ago. So, and those games will count in the standings. And so the regular season is underway, at least for those two teams. For the Brewers, it will be a week from tomorrow, March 28th. They will be in Queens, New York to take on the New York Mets. And then the home opener will be the following Tuesday, April 2nd against the Minnesota Twins. But spring training baseball goes on for the Brewers in Arizona. And if you are listening on WRCE Richland Center or in the area or are going to be in the area on Friday afternoon, you can catch a Brewers spring training game against the Kansas City Royals. Again, 3 o'clock Friday afternoon on News from the Center in Richland Center. The Milwaukee Bucks will be in Boston tonight to take on the Celtics. The broadcast starts at 6 tonight, and you can catch the game on Oshkosh Air Support, News from the Center, Lake Air and Amory, WRJN in Racine, 98Q Country in Park Falls, and locally grown radio in Wisconsin Rapids. Again, the play-in games the first couple of play-in games were held last night for the NCAA tournament, filling in one of the 16 seeds and filling in one of the 10 seeds. Greg, I printed out a whole bunch of copies of the brackets. The brackets are going to be ready.
Those are insane. I got asked to join a bracket thing, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then I'm just going to autofill. I'm just autofilling.
Well, I mean, you can guess just as easily as you can autofill. So, I mean, that's half the fun. Like, you know, when I say St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon, and we ask ourselves where these schools are. Where is St. Mary's? I
feel like one of them is really self-explanatory.
Well, region, yes, but what if it's in southern Nevada? We don't know. We don't know these things. We're gonna learn things tomorrow morning, I think, about some of this. Anyway, then come Friday, the main tournament kicks off Thursday and Friday, and both the Badgers and Marquette are in Friday games. Marquette will take on Western Kentucky at 1 o'clock Friday afternoon in Indianapolis, and the Badgers, a 5 seed, will play 12 seed James Madison Friday night, 8:40 p.m. in Brooklyn. If they win that game, they'll take on the winner of Duke versus Vermont. So, you know, it's a rough path forward for the Wisconsin Badgers, but they're going to give it a go. All right, our homeroom segment is coming up next. We're going to be talking about the Chippewa Falls school referendum and what it means for all of the 90-plus around the state of Wisconsin on April 2nd. Live from Lake Wissota, this is Up North News Radio on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Well,
Morning, Chad.
Good morning, Pat. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you as well. Let's see, we should be joined here by Jeff in just a little bit.
I think so.
All right. Sounds good. I'm going to stick you back in the waiting room until he shows up. This is a long commercial break, and that way you don't have to worry about making noise or anything. I'll come back for you in about 2 minutes here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Pat. How are you today?
I'm very good, thanks. Thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, I've got Chad already has chimed in. I've got him back in the waiting room. I'm going to stick you back there in a minute as well, just so you don't have to worry about making noise. Just wanted to let you know that you made it. You're here, and you look good. You're ready to roll in all this.
I think so.
Okay.
I hope so.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll get started in a minute and a half. So I will just tuck you back in the waiting room for just a second.
All right. And I did email you the frequently asked questions that we have surrounding the referendum.
Yes. So. Yep. Got that. And can't wait to go over all of this. So
awesome. Thank you.
You bet. Well, actually, you know what? We're coming up on time here. So let me bring Chad back in right now. There you go. All right, guys, we're going to get going here in just a couple of seconds.
Well, I know you're a bad history. Rock and roll high school. That's not where I wanna be.
All right, we are back on a Wednesday, March 20th, 7:34 right now on Up North News Radio. Welcome to our weekly homeroom segment where we talk about education, public education, the challenges, the opportunities, the obstacles. The opportunities for schools will include the elections to be held on April 2nd all around the state, along with school board races, county board, town board, city council, what have you. There are going to be 91 different school referendum questions on the ballot. And that's not because 91 school districts suddenly decided to get, a little spendy, shall we say. It's because there is a real issue with what the Wisconsin legislature has done for state aid that has not kept up with inflation, as you've heard over and over in this segment, for 16 years. So we talked last week about the biggest of those referendums, that in the Milwaukee School District. Now we wanted to get a feel for, one of the other school districts around the state. And so to that end, we brought in Jeff Holmes, the superintendent for the Chippewa Falls School District, and business manager Chad Trowbridge. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Pat. Thanks for
Good
having me.
morning.
Yeah, nice
Good
to
morning,
have-
Pat. Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, nice to have you both here. So let's start with we'll start just with Chippewa Falls before we talk any more about kind of a statewide overview here. But Jeff, how about if we start with you as you are kind of introducing the referendum to other people, because clearly not everybody knows, that there's a referendum in their school district. How do you break the ice on that? What do you tell them is on the ballot?
Well, for us, it's a very simple question. It's a 3-year non-recurring referendum that allows for the district to obtain $2.5 million per year during that period of time. It would be for the 2024 through 2027 school years, at which time it would sunset. So very simply put, it just allows for us to maintain staffing levels, programs, and services and facilities to the degree that we need to, based on the shortfall from the state. They didn't make up for their gap in inflation.
Well, and that's putting it mildly here, because again, people
Right.
will say, "Well, wait, in the last state budget, there was this deal that increased funding." And again, we've talked quite a bit about how it was an increase in dollars, but doesn't come close to making it up. Chad, by chance, would you know? Is there if over this whatever period, say the 16 years that it hasn't kept up with inflation, do you know what kind of a shortfall that's meant to just the Chippewa Falls School District?
Yeah, it's been about $3,300 per student over that period of time, which is very, very significant. If we were to have that $3,300 per pupil, in all likelihood, we wouldn't be faced with a question like this right now.
Exactly. And that's the point that I know the Wisconsin Public Education Network has been making as well. And it would be one thing if it were, say, during my time in the legislature, during the Great Recession, when there was not only not a budget surplus, but, we were working really hard to keep the budget balanced and not run a deficit. It's quite another matter when you've got a record budget surplus of upwards of $7 billion. Estimates have it closer to $3 billion now. But Jeff, what for you and other superintendents and school officials, do you feel like that state surplus back when it was closer to $7 billion, do you feel they could have swung that the legislature could have swung the extra $3,300 per pupil just to continue, operations as they are without having to go to referendum?
Well, I do think there was an effort legislatively and gubernatorially in that regard. The problem was they didn't factor in the inflationary pieces to that. Had they made up for those inflationary increases, I think we as a school district probably, as Chad stated, wouldn't be in the position that we're in today. So I do know that there was a concerted effort, and we greatly appreciate that. But certainly in this upcoming the next biennium budget process, they're going to have to do a better job of taking in consideration all factors. And it's not just inflation. We're seeing increases in the area of special ed. There needs to be help in that area as well. Mental health services, since they were placed on school districts, there needs to be help there also. So my big ask of the legislators and the governor is to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't possibly put it any better. Though I will note again, as I do, that this is not just about pointing out the legislative shortfalls, because if that were the case, you'd have voters saying, okay, well then I'm going to vote no to all of this because the whole system is bad. But what we're really looking for is support, local support for school districts. Yeah, the legislature has essentially passed the buck and forced school districts to ask property taxpayers to raise their own costs. But Chad, this particular referendum itself, can you talk about basically the cost per year per taxpayer if the referendum goes through? Because I'm not going to say it's not nothing, but it is something that is probably worthwhile for a lot of voters to consider, what that extra cost would be, that it's not going to break a lot of banks.
Yeah, we would never say it's not nothing, because anytime there's a tax increase, it's always something. But when we look at what property values are projected or have been growing and what they're projected to grow in the coming years, we're estimating that the impact of this referendum, $2.5 million each year for 3 years, would have an average impact of about 5 cents per thousand of property value. So if you consider that to be, what an average home value might be within our district, we're estimating that to be around $12.50 a year.
So $12.50 a year is what you're asking for over a period of 3 years. And Jeff, why the period of 3 years? I know that there's notes that you could project a deficit as far as 5 years out. So people might say, well, why not have a 5-year referendum? Others might say, why don't you make it annual and come back to us, year after year over year? So what is the basis for the 3-year request?
The 3 years for us was discussed, was debated. I think that's the best way to put it. For us, it boiled down to 3 years because of the opportunity for the state to fix the funding formula in relation to inflation and other facets of school funding that need to be addressed. So when we looked at our overall budget over the next 3 years, those were the 3 hardest years that we see over the next 5. And also, people need to keep in mind that we're the 33rd largest school district in the state of Wisconsin, yet in our per pupil spending, we rank 267th. So since 1993, Chippewa Falls Area Unified School District has been a district that's been frugal all along the way. We've gotten a lot out of our operations, even though we're not. I would consider Chippewa Falls Area Unified School District to be a frugal school district, and we've always operated that way. So for us, it boiled down to being a frugal district. Doing it annually, we didn't think we would be able to put ourselves in a very secure position. By going out the 3 years, we have time to work with legislators and the governor and others to make them better understand that the way the current formula works is not in the best interest of schools. And we do believe that it's a state obligation to more fund schools than the local taxpayer. So that was our reason.
Certainly to be much more of a partner in all of this rather than continuing to denigrate and harm public education. Chad, and that was, by the way, that was Jeff Holmes, superintendent of Chippewa Falls Schools, and Chad Trowbridge is the business manager. And again, everything we're saying about Chippewa Falls, just lay that over the top of whatever school district you might be in if they have a referendum up, because a lot of these problems are very similar. And so Chad, in a lot of these districts, as well as yours, I'm sure people are saying, wait a minute, weren't there all kinds of extra funds that were given in terms of pandemic relief? I'll put it the way some people might. What did you do with that money?
Well, it's a fantastic question, Pat, and I do think there is quite a bit of misinformation about that. The pandemic relief funding, referred to as ESSER funding, was intended to bolster education. In the state of Wisconsin, we did not get per pupil increases during the course of the pandemic. The message was loud and clear: use your federal COVID dollars. So I will add that this is something that really has contributed to this budget shortfall problem. As Jeff mentioned earlier, we think the state did a reasonable job of trying to address some of the shortfalls in public schools. But when those per pupil increases were not given throughout the course of the pandemic, and then we have our federal ESSER funding that's going to expire the end of this fiscal year, that is truly, those two combination of factors is what has led to this gap. And
as we mentioned at the top of the program, at this point, going back to 1994, when this whole current school funding system was crafted with whatever good intentions were out there, the way that it's been handled ever since, if you go back to 1994, basically 80% of school districts, 80% at some point have had to go to voters in a referendum just for operational purposes, in shorthand, to keep the lights on. But if this particular operational referendum, Jeff, does not pass, and again, I don't want to be accused of scare tactics here, but you have to come up with a plan. If the vote is no on this referendum, what would be the next steps that the Chippewa district would take?
Well, let's set the record straight, Pat. Right now in the state of Wisconsin, 86% of school districts have had to go to operational referendums since the inception of revenue limits. So it's grown just since the last time you probably looked at those statistics. All right, for Chippewa Falls Area Unified School District, if we're put in a position to make cuts in this next year, not related to declining enrollment, we're looking at having to make $1.9 million in cuts. For us as a school district, I commend Mr. Trowbridge. He's been here for 21 years. Again, he's one of the main reasons over that period of time that we've been able to operate as well as we have been and still remain a frugal and fiscally conscientious school district. But because of the efficiencies in operations that have taken place during the course of those years, we as a district are at a point where you're talking about having to reduce in programming and in people. That's the only two real places left to cut. And in the modern age, particularly in 2024, given everything that we know about school business, it is more about the people. We're not developing products. We can't raise our prices to capture more revenue other than to ask our public to support it. It's one for me, given everything that's occurred in this district since 2014 and what we know from our constituents about what they want for their kids. If you start cutting programming and people, you're going to see a decline in your ability to offer the quality services you have over time.
And there's no other way to put that. Chad, just to wrap things up quick, any kind of a referendum is a reason for a community conversation. And as Jeff said, you've been with the school district for a long time here, a part of the community. How is that community conversation going? How are you feeling about the way that you've talked to people in the district who are going to be voting on this?
But we always appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss this with any members of our community. And I would say for the most part, it's been pretty positive. Whenever you ask for a tax increase, that's never an easy pill to swallow for everyone. But I would say, generally people have understood why we're asking the question, whether they support it or not, ultimately is their decision when they step into the ballot box.
Exactly, which they'll be doing on April 2nd, but we really appreciate being able to give that perspective to voters in Chippewa Falls and elsewhere to look at the big picture of why this is the way that it is, and to maybe think about November elections rather than the April 2nd ones if you have issues with how things are going. Jeff Holmes, Chippewa Falls Superintendent, Chad Trowbridge, Chippewa Falls Business Manager. Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you, Pat.
We will be back with Todd Alba coming up next. You're Up North. And we're good. All right. Chad, thank you so much. Jeff, that was great. I really appreciate you guys taking some time to come on.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting us. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Okay. Look forward to talking to you under hopefully some really good circumstances after April 2nd and talk more about what all is happening in the district.
Appreciate it, Pat. You have a wonderful day.
All right. Thanks. You too. See you guys.
Don't put your snow shovel away just yet.
Yeah, no kidding. Jeepers. Mr. Alba, good morning to you.
Buenos dias. Good morning. How are you?
Very good. Very good.
Excellent.
All right. Here. Where am I here? Yeah, we're playing Mr. Rogers again, mostly just to calm ourselves after a segment like this, like we just had, where we again talk about how the Wisconsin legislature has let us down for 12 years now. And the way to take out that frustration is in November, not in April. And Todd Alba joins us now, and he too, like Mr. Rogers, is tossing shoes around.
I was trying to find a really cool dance mix, but they all sucked.
There's a dance mix of the Mr. Rogers theme.
They weren't good. They weren't good at all. So.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. How are you, Mr. Alba?
We could all use a little Mr. Rogers in our life, as a matter of fact.
Always.
Hey, yeah. I mean, hang on. Just don't go anywhere. I can still talk to you. I'm moving around.
Oh, sure. No, make yourself
great.
at home.
Todd Alba
Todd
walks off
away.
the show.
Yep.
No, I'm coming back. Look what my sister gave me for Christmas.
Look at that. A little Mr. Rogers figurine.
And if you want, I'm not sure if we'll pick this up, but listen to this.
I think we're supposed to hear the trolley.
Yeah. It says, it has little quotes from Mr. Rogers. It says, "You have made this day a special day just by being you." See, and that's what America needs, more Mr. Rogers.
And yet, when you tried to play it for us, you held it up to your ear rather than your microphone, which really is.
But I have my ear pods in. Isn't that? That's one of my mics.
Okay.
Todd knows how to do stuff, Pat. Don't be mean.
Well, sometimes.
Yeah.
What's new? What's happening?
Well, we wanted to find out what's going to be new and happening on the Todd Alba show here, especially as we spoke in our first hour about the many ways that former President Donald Trump continues to spin these lies. And I feel like we are duty bound to just not let those kinds of things slide. And I'm sure that, when it's, whether it's Trygve v. Olson or other, either former Republicans or non-Trump Republicans, hear all this, they get really bothered at hearing the same lies about Iran suddenly getting billions of dollars that went to Hamas to fund the attack in Israel because they're misconstruing, some assets that were frozen. He's continuing to lie about NATO countries somehow not paying their bills. And all I'm seeing here, and then there's the one about Israel where he's saying, well, if you're Jewish, you can't vote Democratic. And that's not Donald Trump's call to make. But in all of these cases, if these things aren't debunked, they're only going to spread.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we talked about it on Monday a little bit. You may have seen over the weekend, Trump was down at this campaign event in Dayton, Ohio. And of course, the bloodbath comments, and we played the entire thing on the show, so nobody could say we took it out of context. And yes, he was talking about foreign trade, but he used this language. And Trygve also, as you mentioned, from the Lincoln Project, like myself, a former Republican, he wrote a column, or actually, what happened was good old Scotty Walker, our former governor, tweeted some nonsensical tweet supporting Trump. And Trygve and I and Scott are all about the same age. And Trygve just took him to task on Twitter, and it got picked up by Raw Story and became literally an international story. And to your point, Pat, what Trygve is pointing out is that, look, it is this ongoing pattern of rhetoric. It fires people up. It divides us. And then he alone can fix it, in his words. And these are all hallmarks. If you add everything that you said and what I just said and what Trygve said together, it is the hallmark of authoritarianism. And I think that people in Wisconsin, Western Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin, urban Wisconsin, that may have voted for Trump in, say, 2016, that may be voting for their local sheriff who is a Republican. I just think that these divisive, hateful comments, as you point out, lies, are not going to wash with the majority of voters in November. And so, yeah, I think it's incumbent upon us to point out factually where he's just blatantly wrong.
Well, and on top of that, I think the thing that still kind of confuses me is the way that people say, well, things were better off under Trump, when there's zero empirical evidence. When Trump says you're better off than 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we couldn't buy toilet paper. There wasn't any toilet paper on the shelves. Things weren't so great. He botched, the handling of it. But that's the least of it. It's just that people know his record, or at least they should. And it's like you said, it's not 2016 where he's like, well, let's try a fresh approach with an outsider. He is so inside. He's never wanting to go outside of power again. He'll do what it takes to stay inside the corridors of power. And yet, Mr. Alba, despite Robin Voss yesterday attacking Trump supporters as whack jobs and morons for trying to recall him, he also said he does endorse Donald Trump for president this fall. You can't make this stuff up.
We used it on Monday, I think, in talking about the rally and these Republicans who are genuflecting at the altar of Trump. We used it Monday. I think we'll dial it up again. Really, the only response to that is, Donald Trump has a message for all these Republicans like Robin Voss, and it's in a song, appropriately so, in a Mr. Rogers form. Only the song is from Hamilton, and it's called "You'll Be Back. Wait and see." That's Donald Trump. He's just looking at these Republicans saying, "You'll be back, and if you don't, I'll send a battalion of army peoples to convince you." That is Donald Trump, and it's a campaign of fear. It's a campaign of anger and retribution. When he says these things, as Trigby reminds us, as someone who's fought authoritarianism around the world, he means it. It's not campaign rhetoric. Believe them when they say that they're going to be a dictator on day one.
You almost wonder who has to be busier in the final weeks of the presidential campaign. Is it the Biden campaign, which will try to stay positive and talk about their achievements? Or I would argue the real responsibility is going to be on good American Republicans to say, I'm not with this guy. And I'm not even going third party. That voting for Biden is the only way that this is going to get done right.
You're absolutely right. It's the people in the middle, really. And I know people don't like centrists or moderates, those words, but let's describe them, right? Trigby talks about, Dobbs dads, white men predominantly, who might traditionally vote conservative, but have a daughter, a wife, a woman in their life. And they're like, look, I want healthcare accessible to them, and I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because of that. It's a quote unquote traditional, principled conservative Republican who says Trump is a step too far. But also on the other side, it's also progressive Democrats who say, look, Joe Biden might not necessarily do it for me, but now is not the time to vote Jill Stein or third party. And to this point that we made in our show before, I don't think that people like us can look down on people who are looking at third party. We have to encourage them and convince them that Joe Biden is the positive choice for democracy and for a path forward. No matter which side of the aisle we're on, if we don't have democracy moving forward and freedom, none of these other lesser arguments on policy are going to matter.
The conversation continues with Todd Alba, noon to 2 today across Civic Media. Thank you, sir. Talk to you a little later on.
Don't forget your Girl Scout cookies.
I will bring them along. Count on it. All right. Greg, thank you as well. Thank you all for listening. Up North News is the Wisconsin outlet for Courier, a pro-democracy news outlet that's building a more informed, engaged, and representative America. You can get our newsletter by signing up at upnorthnewswi.com. Follow me on social media. Be back here tomorrow at 6.